Welcome to Still Speak Podcast. Well, if you've been following my videos on the Murdaugh case, you may have picked up on me hinting at what I thought could be a very big possibility of something. Let me explain. In one video, I asked you, what if the deaths connected to the Murdaughs were the perfect cover for something far more sinister? In another video, I said that Alex's lawyer said that it was not a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and that he also said, I don't think he would stage a flat tire to commit suicide. It doesn't add up. And he also mentioned that there was no gun found at the scene. And he said all this when he was discussing the shooting of Alex Murdaugh last weekend. And when I told you that, I said I disagreed, and that it's absolutely possible it could be suicide. It does not necessarily have to mean that Alex, did the actual shooting. What I meant was he could have hired someone to kill him in a suicide type of attempt. The moment I saw Alex had been shot last weekend, my immediate thought was not that someone wanted his family dead, although I definitely considered that as a possibility as well. Then it came out the next day that Alex admitted to an addiction, and he said he was resigning from his law firm. And I thought, why make this announcement the day after someone tried to kill you? Red flag, because this was really odd timing. And then the next day after that, it came out that he was forced to resign due to misappropriating of funds, possibly into the millions from the law firm. And at that moment, it confirmed, my initial reaction to the shooting, and that it was either Alex shot himself or that he had hired someone to kill him. Well, breaking news happened last night as I was recording a video about missing 22-year-old Gabby Petito. If you've not seen my videos about her story, please do. But that breaking news was, drum roll, Alex Murdaugh orchestrated his own shooting in an elaborate scheme to leave his son with a $10 million life insurance policy. Murdaugh admitted to this insane plan to investigators on Monday. Curtis Edward Smith was the alleged gunman who clearly botched the plan, since Alex had a superficial gunshot wound and had been released from the hospital in under 2 days. Alex recently got the insurance plan for this scheme, which I'm sure he used the deaths of his wife and son as an explanation to anyone who knew about it and why he needed it. Alex provided Curtis with the gun and told him to shoot him in the head. On the day of the shooting, Curtis followed Alex and then took the shot on the side of a road that was leading to Charleston. Curtis fled and ditched the gun. Curtis Edward Smith is a former client of Alex Murdaugh. Curtis, 61 years old, faces charges of assisted suicide, assault and battery, pointing and presenting a firearm, insurance fraud, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud in connection with the case, according to SLED. Police also charged Smith for allegedly selling meth and possessing marijuana. Additional charges are expected. Wow, and wow. If Alex Murdaugh had an addiction problem and is capable of not only messing with funds in his own law firm into the millions, but also capable of coming up with this plan to be killed so his son can get insurance money, then Alex Murdaugh is capable of anything. Which brings me to Paul and Maggie Murdaugh and their deaths in June of this year. I have absolutely considered that Alex is involved in their murders as well, because, he had a housekeeper's accidental death on his property, of which he had to settle a wrongful death suit in the amount of $500,000. And then, a few months later, Paul was involved in the boating accident that killed Mallory Beach. Paul was not only criminally charged, but there were civil suits filed against the family. In addition, the insurance company who insured the boat also denied the claim to be paid out for the boating accident, citing that Alex knew or should have known that his son had been using his brother's ID to obtain alcohol. And 3 days prior to their murders, a motion had been filed to get the Murdaugh's financial records, because at that time they had been asked many times to turn them over and had not done so. And then 3 days after that is when Paul and Maggie were murdered. And it could be a coincidence, but it stands out to me that 3 days later they were dead. And a reporter also came out on Nancy Grace claiming that, from a very credible source, that Maggie Murdaugh had hired a forensic accountant prior to her death, which is, if it's true, could be because she knew of his addiction. Maybe she just suspected it, so wanted to see how much was being spent, or she knew that he was messing with funds, or maybe there was a divorce on the horizon and she wanted to see, all they did and did not have financially. In one of my videos, I said that Alex's 911 call at the end was strange because he claimed to not be touching the bodies, yet it sounded as if he had put the phone down and was yelling at the phone from a distance. And I still wonder why he was doing that if he was not touching the bodies or anywhere near the bodies at that time. What was he doing? Why couldn't he hold the phone? Sometimes people are capable of killing themselves, but when it comes to taking their own lives, they can't bring themselves to do it. I've seen this in several cases where somebody killed somebody and then they attempted to commit suicide and they failed at it. Murder-suicide is actually really common, especially when there is a money factor at play. Is it possible that Alex killed Paul and Maggie and the original plan was to kill himself in a murder-suicide, but was unable to pull it off, like actually kill himself? Or maybe he hired a different hitman to kill them and told that person where Maggie and Paul would be located together. I mean, they were shot outside dog kennels on a 1,700-acre property. Whoever killed them had to be following them really closely to know the exact spot that they would be on that property. All the people who were on the boat the night Mallory Beach was killed have voluntarily gave DNA samples, as did Mallory Beach's family after Paul and Maggie's deaths. Is Alex only guilty of what has happened since his son and wife's deaths? Or, I ask once again, what if all the events of the last 3 months was because of Alex, and not that there is some really pissed off individual out there seeking revenge? And I end by asking you again also, what if the death of Stephen Smith, Mallory Beach, and the housekeeper Gloria was the perfect cover-up opportunity for something far more sinister? Until next time did not last long, so I'm back because there's an update. As I finished recording, the attorneys for Alex Murdaugh have released a statement. It says, quote, on September 4th, it became clear Alex believed that ending his life was his only option. Today, he knows that's not true. For the last 20 years, there have been many people feeding his addiction to opiates. During that time, these individuals took advantage of his addiction and his ability to pay substantial funds for illegal drugs. One of those individuals took advantage of his mental illness and agreed to take Alex's life by shooting him in the head. Fortunately, Alex was not killed by the gunshot wound. Alex is fully cooperating with SLED into their investigation into his shooting, opiate use, and the search to find the person or people responsible for the murder of his wife and son. Alex is not without fault, but he is just one of many whose life has been devastated by opiate addiction, unquote. Wow, this is just... oh my goodness. Okay, so I did mention in a video that opiates was what was being rumored as his drug of choice. We now know that that is true. And we also didn't know how long he had this addiction, but we now know that it's been for 20 years. However, here, I don't like this shift blaming. I know they end it with saying that Alex is not without fault, but there's definitely shift blaming and mentioning of individuals taking advantage of his addiction. Alex is a grown man. Okay, he's a grown man. And I know opiate addiction is no joke. I'm definitely not going to downplay that. And yes, at times people will take advantage if you have a decent amount of money. But at the end of the day, Alex hired this man, and Alex is the one who had this addiction and did not get help for 20 years. So this is another turn in this tale. Wow, I just cannot believe this story. I'm not one that usually, revels in somebody's tragedy. I mean, this story has tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. But my goodness, is this going to be a hell of a movie? Too bad we already know all of the pieces of the story. We just don't know who ultimately killed Paul and Maggie. Now, for real, until next time, I'll see you soon.